Senator Loomis, she spoke and she said that we should have the Clarity Act passed by the end of the year here, which would be great if we got that across the line, just for adoption of the asset class as a whole and institutions and enterprises to really kind of move in at scale. As acquisitions are made, these institutions buy up exchanges, things kind of transpire from here. We'll have these TradFi and DeFi and crypto all kind of rolled into one. And if the volatility is maintained in this asset class, it's probably for the higher net worth people. Just wild to see finally that the crypto winter is over. And now we're getting these things breaking through the snow here and moving at a breakneck speed. We have a hedge fund that we manage that has a little over $200 million worth of XRP currently being put to work today in a couple different strategies where we're able to pay cash dividends to people on a quarterly basis. Our number one rule of Digital Wealth Partners is don't lose XRP. The second rule is refer to rule number one. The end goal here is to, I don't want to say become another BlackRock, but be a large, prominent financial institution where people aren't just a number.
Hey, what's going on, family and friends? Ray Fuentes here, and we're back with another exclusive production. Today, I'm bringing you an interview with the one and only Jake Claver. My last interview featuring Jake and I live at the XRP Las Vegas conference surpassed 100,000 views in just a week. So it's obvious that right now, Jake is a hot commodity in high demand, and I'm fortunate to have him on my channel. In this interview, Jake and I dive deep into some powerful topics, including how the accredited investor rules may soon apply to digital assets, including XRP, the next wave of IPOs in crypto, how Digital Wealth Partners is actively putting $200 million worth of their clients' XRP to work through proprietary hedge fund strategies, earning returns for their clients while keeping their assets bankruptcy remote and secure. We also discuss why the flip of the switch moment for crypto adoption will come alongside regulatory clarity and Jake's long-term vision to build an institution rivaling giants like BlackRock. This interview is packed with insights on wealth, legacy, and rooted in the XRP family. So with that being said, let's roll the tape to my interview with the living legend, Jake Claver. Thanks for tuning in. Love you mucho. Hey, what's going on, family and friends? We're back with another exclusive production. Today, we're blessed with the presence of someone loved and well known by the XRP community and digital asset space at large. Let's bring him up onto this stage. Boom, there he is. Meet Jake Claver. This is a man who doesn't need an introduction since many of you watching today know exactly who he is. But for those who are new to the space, welcome. Meet Jake Claver, a family office professional, investor, and Web3 expert. As director of Digital Ascension Group and founder of Digital Wealth Partners, Jake advises high net worth and ultra high net worth clients on wealth, digital assets, and legacy building. Jake is a true leader shaping the future of family offices and the digital asset space as we know it. Jake, thanks for joining me today, sir. How are you?
Absolutely, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for bringing us into your world-class office. I'm digging the backdrop you've got there. Well-deserved, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we moved in here about a month ago. So
congrats.
To have a formal spot to meet people here in Dallas.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of butthurt you didn't ask me to help move. I mean, that's one of my specialties.
Well, I didn't get to help move either. We had to hire a company that they're very strict about what they do and how they get it done here in this building. So,
well, that makes sense. You've been globetrotting the world, speaking at many conferences, including SALT as of late. Can you share your experience and any key takeaways?
So yeah, just got back from that last week. I really enjoyed that. Next to Pascal and the other gentleman that was up there. Different panel. You know, we talked about wealth management and financial products that have been issued on top of these assets. A lot of really good takeaways. So Senator Loomis, she spoke and she said that we should have, the Clarity Act passed by the end of the year here, which would be great if we got that across the line, just for, adoption of the asset class as a whole and, institutions and enterprises to really kind of move in at scale. There was BNY Mellon. They had, the who's who was there in Jackson Hole. And then they wrapped it up with the Fed meeting at the end of the week on the Friday. If you haven't ever been to Jackson Hole, highly recommend. The raw beauty is just majestic in the valley, and to have the mountains around it and the rolling, fields, just blown away by how untouched the landscape is there. So highly recommend for a vacation spot, either during the summer or, during the winter if you're going to ski too. Seem pretty good.
Yeah, I heard it's world-class snowboarding and skiing. Maybe when my investment portfolio matures, they'll let me into that in Jackson Hole.
That is coming.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt in my mind. Well, thank you for sharing your experience at SALT. The crux of this interview, Jake, was to revisit even our discussion from XRP Las Vegas. You made some comments about how this digital asset landscape is maturing to the point where there's going to be potentially new processes in place, similar to what we already see in the traditional finance landscape, as far as the accredited investor requirements applying to investing into specific alternative investments. You mentioned that accredited investor requirements may apply to even investing into digital assets like XRP and others. What did you mean by that? Can you provide more context for those that are tuning in today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we manage a hedge fund. We do require that people are accredited to work with us, digital wealth partners, to be able to participate and earn returns on their XRP and the strategies that we employ. They're with Anchorage inside institutional custody. But as the asset class matures, I do think that you're going to see financial products get built on top of these. So we've talked about, treasury companies, you've got ETFs, and there's other financial products that are being brought to market right now that allow people access to this through traditional means. But it is a risky asset class in comparison to pretty much any other asset class. There's more volatility here than anything else. And so with that, tends to require a certain sophistication or net worth for people to participate. And as crypto gets rolled in and there's more regulation around it and wealth advisors are adopting it, anything with leverage or high volatility that's on the end of the risk curve, you tend to see those qualifications required to participate in, including private equity, many of the other things that we think will be tokenized so that there's going to be liquidity that doesn't exist today, have those parameters around them. And so, as this matures, I do think that may end up being a qualification or requirement so that people can get access to these products. And hopefully we get, some changes here. And we do see that the SEC is rolling out some tests or other ways you can become accredited outside of just net worth or income. We've wanted that for a long time, but it does look like that is moving forward. So excited for all those things. But that's kind of the premise there. Is I do think that as acquisitions are made, these institutions buy up exchanges and things kind of transpire from here. We'll have these TradFi and DeFi and crypto all kind of rolled into one. And if the volatility is maintained in this asset class, it's probably for the higher net worth people.
Wow. So in a nutshell, you do envision the accredited investor rules applying to this specific alternative investment space in the shortcomings?
Yeah, as regulations gets rolled out, and if specifically for certain assets, I think that there's going to be a lot of demand. And with that, there's not going to be as much access. People today are buying these assets on exchanges as an investment, whereas a lot of these institutions and enterprises are going to be using these networks and assets to be able to settle value or for other purposes. And so as that demand increases and this transition takes place, I think the way you get access to these assets is going to change as well.
Well said, Jake. Now, how do you think that will apply to the non-accredited investor community that's already invested into XRP or in this digital asset space?
I think they might become accredited with some of the appreciation. I think a lot of them may meet those requirements. And again, if we get some of these changes from the SEC that have been proposed, where you're able to take a test in other jurisdictions to become a sophisticated investor, like in the UK, if you've worked in a certain field for 2 years, if you have more than a certain amount of hours invested into learning about something, if you have made investments in a certain area for a certain period of time, you meet that sophisticated investor requirement and you're able to participate, which I think those qualifications make a lot more sense than just, your income or your net worth when you're trying to participate in certain areas.
And I believe there's a bill that's already passed the House that it's in review with the Senate, the Equal Opportunity Act, which should implement a new test which would qualify an individual into the accredited investor status, rather than through the various multi-pronged qualification, which would be very timely, as we also see the Clarity Act, like you just mentioned, which would then qualify what is or what is not a digital commodity versus a security contract, and plus with the Genius Act that we just saw instituted and passed. Everything is just coming into the fold at once. And so do you think because of all this, when it all comes and becomes instituted, is that in essence the flip of the switch moment?
Well, we're going to need a Cambrian explosion for this asset class in particular, right? When we do see the need for instant settlement, I think they're going to funnel a ton of liquidity into certain networks and certain assets in order to be able to shore things up and de-risk from the problems that a lot of this monetary system that we exist in today has caused. And maybe, like to your point, all of this other regulation and the things that are being proposed and passed in Congress now and through the House may culminate around that in order to allow for a greater opportunity for the public to participate.
And to add more context to this discussion, Jake, trying to keep this interview short, I did speak when I was at XRP Las Vegas. I interviewed Paul Barron, who also mentioned that the processes are also going to become different, requiring so much more education across the board for, I believe, even during my time at my former employer, Link2, when we were doing research across this whole landscape. I mean, even in the US, there's, I want to say, a 50 million households which qualify for the accredited investor status, but don't participate. So even right there with the Equal Opportunity Act, and there's just so much going on right now, Jake. Unless you have your head in the sand, it's hard not to become aware of what's going on in the traditional markets, in this new DeFi landscape. I mean, we're seeing breaking stories across major outlets. Gemini just announced their IPO. Circle just IPO'd. I'm sure that there's going to be others, maybe specifically within the XRP community. What are your thoughts? Do you think there's going to be a large IPO wave to follow?
There's been Circle this year as of the announcement or the anticipation that they're going to go public in the near term, next 12 months or so. And we've already seen precedent set for that by some of the companies that have had some pretty significant valuation jumps on the day they're listed. What was it? Circle went up 100% in the first 24 hours after they listed their stock. It's just wild to see finally that the crypto winter is over. And now we're getting these things breaking through the snow here and moving at a breakneck speed like you're talking about. So yeah, super excited for all the opportunity that's going to exist for people that have taken advantage of the bear market and dollar cost average and made investments in some of these companies over that time frame over the last 4 years.
For the accredited investors who've participated and even invested into the private equity of some of these picks and shovels, these disruptive companies, like you mentioned, the Circles, the Ripples, what do you think that makes for them?
I think they're going to make a lot of money when these companies go public, as long as they get their shares. You know, there's been some situations where kind of back and forth on that with your previous employer. I think that that's going to work out. I think that people are going to be made whole there, which is cool. Yeah, really glad for that. People that have bought through other brokers on the private market, if you got access to these things, Coinbase did a 7x from where you could have bought it just a few months prior to when they went public, and then they came back down to that price, and now they're back up again through the bear market here. But yeah, I think that there's going to be a significant amount of wealth generated for people that are participating in private equity this go around.
And to comment on the former employer with Link2 and their issues with the SPV structures and what's going on there, I think there's a lot to be learned through this process, through the bankruptcy courts, which is a very transparent process. I do believe that through the court systems, things are going to work out favorably for all parties. I do think it's probably in one's best interest to file a claim if necessary, but I do believe, and I'm optimistic that things will work out. And even for the platform Link2, I do believe that there's an opportunity for them to turn the lights back on and provide the great services that they once did and further democratize access to this hard to reach investment landscape. But anyways, moving on, if you don't mind. Yeah, for sure. For everything that is going around or going on for the utility for these digital assets, specifically XRP, what are some new opportunities? You mentioned the XRP Treasury Management, but even specifically for Digital Wealth Partners, you guys were in the news as of late for being able to provide additional utility for XRP holders. Do you mind discussing that?
Yeah, for sure. So we have a hedge fund that we manage that has a little over $200 million worth of XRP currently being put to work today in a couple different strategies where we're able to pay, cash dividends to people on a quarterly basis or continue to compound your investment in XRP. And we use some proprietary strategies and partnerships that we have in order to be able to orchestrate that. It's segregated, bankruptcy remote, held in institutional custody, where we reflect that value on a counterparty's platform. So we're removing that counterparty risk that a lot of people don't want. If you were part of Celsius or Voyager or FTX, you're a creditor. These assets are held away. They're reflected somewhere else. We get a line of margin against those, and we trade that line of margin in these market neutral strategies that are proprietary. And so with that, we're able to generate cash returns or, again, continue to compound the asset. You don't have the risk of DeFi or smart contract being hacked. Your assets are held safely. We've built all this selfishly because I want it done a specific way. And if nobody else is willing to do it that way, I'm going to do it myself.
With iTrust Capital, they are providing that institutional custody as well. And in their processes, you basically invest your XRP within their platform, and then you basically say goodbye to it. You receive cash back. What are your thoughts on that? Yes, it removes potential threats, but now you've given up custody of XRP. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the way that we orchestrate it is you put the asset up. It's a capital asset that goes into the fund. There's no tax implications. At any time, you can withdraw that asset and you get that exact XRP back. And that's the reason there's no tax implications on the way we've structured things. There's going to be other people that want to build similar products to what we're doing. We're going to do it a very specific way. We're going to mitigate taxes. We're going to make sure that the assets are safe. Our number one rule at Digital Wealth Partners is don't lose XRP. The second rule is refer to rule number one. So
that was a good rule.
Those are our rules. And that's our primary objective is capital preservation and then to earn returns on top of it. And that's why we're putting it to work in market neutral strategies with proven partners that have great track records. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people that try to copy this and come to market with different things. You've got Doppler Finance, great guys over there. They're paying a guaranteed return on stuff. You can't participate if you are a U.S. investor, or you're not supposed to unless you're using a VPN because they've geofenced the U.S. But similar stuff to what we're doing. They use Copper as their custody provider. iTrust uses Fireblocks, as you mentioned. I don't really qualify those as institutional custody. They're a custody software solution that does segregate assets. There may be a portion of insurance on there, but when it comes to being bankruptcy remote and having some of the other additional assurances that Anchorage provides with the OCC charter, that's where I feel warm and fuzzy. And we'll continue to build and develop relationships with other custodians that are at a very high standard to be able to put these assets to work in a very safe way that's not through just what's out there on the market. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to generate a yield on these assets, there's only so many limited ways that you can, and you kind of get in where you fit in. We are going to have a product for IRAs in the near future at Digital Wealth Partners where we compound your assets in your account. They don't go anywhere else. You maintain ownership of them, and we'll be able to continue to compound the asset through trades. And that's the benefit of a qualified account or a tax deferred or an IRA or a 401k or whatever your vehicle you're using, is you can trade tax free inside that account. And then later on, you may have the tax implications if it's not a Roth. But in compounding that and using the algorithm that we're looking at, I think it's going to be a really attractive solution for people on their retirement accounts.
Thank you for sharing that, sir. I appreciate you going into great detail, and I'm just super bullish on the direction of where you guys are going, and congratulations on your success. Can I ask you, though, with all the success and achievements as of late, what's your end goal for all of these ventures that you've founded? Do you see a potential exit? Talk to me.
The end goal here is to, I don't want to say become another BlackRock, but be a large, prominent financial institution where people aren't just a number. I'm part of the XRP family. I want people to be taken care of. I don't want, people to be taken advantage of. And that's why a lot of what I've done has just been, one, for myself. I wanted these things for me and my family, but if I can share that with the XRP Army and the XRP family, that's been the goal the whole time. Make sure that people have a safe place to be able to hold their assets and grow their wealth and protect it over the long term. We haven't ever raised money from anybody else. I don't have any outside influence. We don't have any other parties that could take control or cause issue here. And I don't plan on that ever taking place either. We've got to a point now where very self-sufficient, and I think it'll continue to grow and compound on itself. And we may make acquisitions, but I don't ever plan on becoming acquired in any capacity.
Wow. Kudos to you, Jake. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today and stopping by for the benefit of not just the XRP family, but the digital asset landscape at large. And I'm looking forward to your continued success. By the way, are you going to be going to Ripple Swell this year?
We will. Yeah, November 4th and 5th up there in New York. We're not going to make the XRP community evening, though. I know. I would love to. Unfortunately, I have a back-to-back schedule. We're at CoinAlts just a few days prior. Then we go to New York for Swell. We got to leave on the 5th in the evening to make it to Futurist that night because we speak on the 6th there in Miami. And then we'll be around for a whole day there. And then we leave on the 7th to be back here in Dallas for our Rockefeller Summit with Laughlin Group to teach people the Rockefeller method for all of our clients. So it's a action-packed 2 weeks there at the end of October and early November. And I wish I could make the community night, but unfortunately I will not be there.
It's all right, Jake. You're taking over the world and it's allowed. So kudos to you and congratulations. Say hello to the Digital Wealth Partners team for me and tell Max that I say hello and miss you guys mucho. Love you mucho. And thanks again for stopping by, sir.
Love you mucho, Ray. Appreciate it, brother.
Love you mucho, Jake. Thanks again.